Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapya Sarvam Trilokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata cha Pita Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Vedyad Rabinam Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So, welcome to Halloween satsang. I'm going to turn my phone off completely to save juice. There. So, Ganesh, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here, Jeff.
May I ask you to chant? It's pitch black here.
Yeah, sure.
And Mark, do you remember where we are?
We're in chapter 2, page 53, number 27.
Yagati karma yuktanam sachavagindriyad vadet yoginam yagati kwapi yakathya bhavatorjita. One may express the destiny of those devoted to action with the organ of speech, but the destiny of the yogis can never be expressed because it is transcendental.
Yes. So, for those who are identified with the body, we can talk about their karma. I did this action and I'm going to get that reaction, or someone else did such and such an action, they will get such and such a reaction. Or we can talk about those identified with the subtle body. Oh, I have all this stored up karma from past lives, and I'm going to come back as such and such and so and so. All of that can be expressed in speech. We can talk about it. But for those rare souls, the yogis, whose minds are yoked to the infinite, speech cannot go there. In Mandukya Upanishad, in the 7th mantra, the Rishi says, Avyapadesham, Upadesha. Upadesha means to teach or to talk about it. Upadesha. Avyapadesha means you can't talk about it. Or one of my favorite verses from second chapter of Gita. He who knows, knows it not. She who knows it not, knows it. So if you're caught up in all sorts of polemics, arguments about samadhi and shmamadhi, kundalini and fettuccine, all this stuff, it will give you some worldly satisfaction. But for the woman of real wisdom, silence. Next one.
Evam nyatva tvamam margam yoginam naiva kalpitam vikalpavarjanam tesham swayam siddhi pravartate. Knowing this, one never says that the yogis have any particular path. For them, it is the giving up of all duality. The supreme attainment comes of itself.
Yes. So the mark of the man or woman of wisdom is the cessation of all struggle. God. Frequently, people used to say to me when I was working for the church, Jim, I thought you were a Vedanta and a yogi. How can you work for those people? And for the yogi, I am a Catholic, I'm a Hindu, I'm a Buddhist, I'm a Jain, I'm a Muslim, I'm an atheist, I'm a pagan, and I am none of it. If it's in the world of name and form, it is Sa Guna Brahman, Brahman with qualities, but it's still all Brahman. And I, the eternal subject, am Nirguna Brahman. And frankly, Swamiji used to talk about it's an evolution, not a revolution. All souls are coming home to God. And in the end, we don't really have a choice to do sadhana. We can do no other. I like to compare it with puberty. Nobody chooses puberty. Now, as the result of puberty, we make choices. But no one chooses puberty. No one in the end really chooses the spiritual path. We come to a point in our unfoldment as a human being. So be of good cheer, have faith. You can't really fall off the path. If you put your yoga down for a while or a lifetime, don't worry. Your suffering will bring you back always. Any thoughts on this? So there's an old Zen proverb, hasten slowly. Have clear intention towards liberation. But take it easy. It's all going to work out. Next verse.
Tirthe vantyajage va yatra kutra mritopi va na yogi pashyate garbham pare brahmani liyate. The yogi, having died anywhere, in a holy place or in the house of an untouchable, does not see the mother's womb again. He is dissolved in the supreme Brahman.
Yes. So, what is it that self-realization gives us? It gives us moksha, liberation. What is liberation? In the human mind, the cause for reincarnation is gone. What is the cause of reincarnation? You don't have to think of it as taking up another human body. You can think of it just simply as going from one situation to another. In order to garner experience, in order to fulfill desire. So for the yogi, for the woman of steady wisdom, all desire has been cast off. The cause for rebirth is gone. Now, there's another way to interpret this. The self is never born in the first place. So what is the mark of the man or woman of wisdom? They are identified with the self, not the body. So what self-knowledge gives us is the deep understanding I was really never born in the first place. I never did enter into the mother's womb. It's all like a very long and vivid dream. Both are valid ways to interpret the shloka. Next verse.
Sahajam achintyam yastu pashyet swarupam ghatati yadi tatheshtam lipyate naiva doshaihi sakradapi tadbhava karma kinchit kuryat tadapi nacha ibadha samyamiva tapasvi. I'm going to read it again. I didn't like the meter, the way I did it. Sahajam achintyam Okay, maybe I'll figure it out later. He who has seen his true self, which is innate, unborn, and incomprehensible, does not, if anything desired happens to him, become tainted. Becoming free from taint, he never performs any action. The man of self-restraint or the ascetic, therefore, is never bound.
Yes. So, what restrains the mind of the person of steady wisdom? The mind no longer extroverts into the world with this sangraha, gimme, attachment. I must have this, I can't have that. Why? because they see the fundamental unreality of all the names and forms. They know I is never touched. The body will get its allotted dose of joys and sorrows, honor and dishonor, praise and censure, product, force of the past maturing. But for the yogi, to use the language of the Master Jesus, I am in the world, but not of it. My kingdom is not of this world. I got a different playground. He didn't say that, I did. So the person of steady wisdom watches the world go by. It has perhaps some entertainment value at best. Trinkets and baubles. Nothing is going to touch you ever. Next one.
Niramayam nishpratimam nirakritim nirashrayam nirvapusham nirashisham nirdvandva nirmoham alupta shaktikam tamishamatmanam upaiti shashvatam. He attains to the Supreme Self, who is eternal, pure, fearless, formless, and supportless, who is without body, without desire, beyond the pairs of opposites, free from illusion, and of undiminished power.
Yes. So again, the language fails us. It says he attains. It's not like you go someplace, you grab something, you get something. The subtle intellect realizes what you've always been. Monday night when we were doing Yoga Vasishta, we had those verses that talk about this paradigm, which I've used so many times. There is no other bondage than the conviction in the mind, the deeply rooted conviction caused by ignorance that I'm bound, meaning I think I'm my body. I think I'm a person. When I'm in that state, I take my individuality as real. I take the world as real. There is no other liberation than the deeply rooted conviction in the subtle intellect. Not that I'm an enlightened person, but I am Brahman. I'm never free. Nothing touches me. Now listen carefully. Neither state touches the self. Self is already free. Now, this deeply rooted conviction that I am Brahman, it's not something you're going to get by just reading a lot of books or chanting, I am Brahman, I am Brahman, I am Brahman, over and over again. That doesn't work. I like to use the metaphor that if you're by a very clear lake or a swimming pool and the surface is being ruffled by the wind, you cannot see the bottom of the lake. It's there. But if everybody gets out of the pool or the wind dies down, you can see through the still water to the bottom. So this is the abhyasa that we must do. So I know beyond the shadow of a doubt, I'm a person, not my body. And that Chidakasha, that space of consciousness. In Yoga Sutra, we get this wonderful little maxim. Abhyasa, vairagyacha. Those are the two things we need to do. Practice and renunciation. So simple. So simple. Now, when I get triggered and upset and I try to let it go and I can't, why? In a sense, you missed the opportunity. The opportunity to practice renunciation is when the good stuff came to me. Ordinary people in ignorance, they don't want to renounce the good stuff. No, that's fabulous. I got the boyfriend. I got the house. I got the job. I got the money. Then it's too late. You're hooked. You're hooked. So when the good stuff comes, practice shunya chitta, emptiness of mind. Let it pass. Now, you have good manners. When someone says, "Oh, Jim, you're so handsome," you graciously say thank you. Don't believe it for a moment. Rub with the handsome. "Oh, Jim, you're so wise and loving." You graciously say thank you. Is there a wise, loving person inside? No. But if you buy into it, Jim, you're so handsome. "Oh, really?" Then when the next person says, "Don't touch me," then you're all upset. Or somebody says, "Oh, you did so well on that project at work. Oh, you're the best employee." And you believe it. When they say, "Oh, you're being replaced. You're no longer necessary. We're having," what's the polite term they use? "We're having a reorganization." You don't say you're fired anymore. Having a reorganization. And you're all stuck. Price tag for steady wisdom. Priya is here. Mm-hmm. What's the phrase? I shamelessly have stolen it.
Oh, perpetual acceptance.
Yes, I modified it. Radical perpetual acceptance. But I like perpetual acceptance. And radical perpetual renunciation. In the end, they're the same thing. And we have to be vigilant. You can't do your yoga only when it hurts. It's too late. It's too late. We're back to our very basic Sakshi Bhava practice. What does it feel like when I want something I don't have? It sucks. Don't let your ego delude you. You are not unhappy because you didn't get what you want. You're unhappy because you're wanting. Shankara says, don't embrace a rotting corpse thinking it's a beautiful bride. And also, when you do get a success or get what you want, own your ananda. Ah, that stopped my mind. It's a taste of my own self-nature. I just use the object for the situation. I am Paramasukham, supreme happiness. Not the object. Vyasa Vairagyacha. Next verse.
Vedo na diksha na cha munda na kriya guru na shishyo na cha yantra sampadah mudradikam chapi na yatra bhasate kamishamatmanam upaiti shashvatam. He attains to the supreme eternal self in whom exists no Veda, no initiation, no tonsure, no teacher, no disciple, no perfection of symbolic figures, no hand posture or anything else.
So all these things we associate with the path. Wearing funny white clothes or yellow or orange clothes, having your head shaved with a Ch.2, or growing a very long beard. No scriptures, no tantra, no mudra, no gestures, no puja, no ritual. No yajna, no Vedic sacrifice. Now, the woman or man of wisdom moves through the world much like a chameleon, or what do they call them? Kettlefish that can change colors all the time depending on the background. So the yogi is appropriate to whatever situation they're in, because they're not attached to any way of being. And none of it means anything. They can go to a sports ball game and scream and yell like everybody else. They can go to the temple on a holiday, very sacred space, and go out dancing, retire in solitude. But make sure as a yogi, we do not fool ourselves by doing that because I'm attached to it. Or is that where the body has been led by the force of the past and the desires of other people? I've really given up the attachment. Any thoughts on this? Next one.
Ashambhavam Shaktikamaanavam na Vapindam Charupam Chakpadadikam na va Arambha Nishpatti Ghatadikam Chano Tameshamatmanam Upaiti Shashvatam. He attains to the supreme eternal self in whom is neither Shambhavi nor Shakti nor Anavi initiation, neither a sphere nor an image nor a foot nor anything else, neither beginning nor ending nor a jar, etc. There's also a long note.
What was the first word? I didn't catch the first word.
He who attains to the supreme.
And next idea.
Okay, maybe I'll read it. He attains to the supreme eternal self in whom is neither Shambhavi. So those are explained in a note.
But what was the first word? That's the one I couldn't get.
Shambhavi.
I don't know what that means.
So yeah, that's explained in the note.
Oh, okay.
Tantrika texts speak of three kinds of initiation. Shambhavi initiation, which is very rare, is that in which the teacher by a mere word, look, touch, or by will imparts the highest knowledge of God to the disciple instantly. Shakti initiation is that in which the teacher instills into the disciple a great spiritual power, which will of itself within a reasonable time bring about the disciple's spiritual emancipation. The disciple does not have to exert themselves for this realization. Such initiation also is exceptional. Anavi or mantri initiation is that in which the teacher on an auspicious day instructs the disciple concerning the method of spiritual practice they should follow, gives them a word or phrase called mantra to repeat, and offers other necessary instructions. The disciple must practice according to these instructions to gain spiritual knowledge.
Yes, so at one level, these are valid. And none of it is of any concern to the person of steady wisdom. If a person is rooted in the self, how they may interact with a student will come by grace. You'll know. I would say these kinds of initiations are exclusive to the Tantrika practices. I certainly saw Swamiji do all three of those. All right, going on.
Yasya svarupat sacharacharam jagat utpadyate tishtati liyate piva payo vikara divakhena budbudaha tamishamatmanupaiti shashvatam. He attains to the supreme eternal self, from whose essence the universe of movable and immovable objects is born, in whom it rests and into whom it dissolves, even as foam and bubbles are born of the transformation of water.
Yes. So this is one of the classic images of the relationless relationship of the self and the world of name and form. If you go out to the shore and you see the breaking waves come in, you will see at the crest of the breaking waves, the froth and the foam, the bud, the bubbles, it's the same word. Now, that's different than if you've got soap in the water and you've got bubbles. Those are different bubbles. That's water plus salt. But if it's just breaking waves, it's the water itself appearing as the foam. And if you go further out into the ocean where the waves are not breaking same waves, it's all just water. Meaning the material cause. The whole world is nothing but God. It's all God. And in reality, God never changes its nature. Ch.2. It's only a trick of the mind. Spiritual optical illusion. We see good and bad, gain and loss. All the dvandvas, the pairs of opposites. We don't have to get entangled. Can't remember if I shared this in this class or not, but I was watching a documentary about Ramana Maharshi several weeks ago. And they were talking about when he had gone to Tiruvannamalai and he was doing seeming tapas, they call it, in the crypt shrine of the temple. And no one knew where he was. And it was sometime later, weeks or months, I'm not sure, I can't remember. His mother finally was told where he was. So she comes down into the crypt and pleads with him to come home, his own mother. And the video talks about he didn't say a word. And he was completely impassive. He looked at her as if she were a stone or a tree. Because he could see what looked like a Navan form mummy. Just now, that doesn't mean we're rude in our behavior. But inside, all of it. Next one.
Nasa nirodho nacha drishtirāsanam bodhopyabodhopi nayatra bhasate nadi pracharopi nayatra kinchet kanishamatmanamupaiti shashvatam. He attains to the supreme eternal self in whom is no closing of nostril, nor gazing, nor posture, and in whom is neither knowledge nor ignorance nor any nerve current.
So the reference here is to various practices in the Raja Yoga tradition, pranayama, or various asanas, or any of those various things. Those practices in order to attain something are gone. Now, listen carefully. The seeker may do spiritual practices so they may purify the mind, so that their essential nature is clear. The woman of wisdom may also be seen to be doing spiritual practices, but it does not add to their knowledge of the self. You see it or you don't. But it's the highest form of worldly pleasure. So we have all sorts of stories about great sages who was in samadhi for 12 years. Doesn't add to their knowledge of the self. That's just what their mind was led to do. It's their idea of a good time. I don't know if this is true or not. It's an apocryphal anecdote about Ramakrishna. So he married the mother, and when they were both children, but they never had a sexual relationship. And one of the disciples asked him once why he and the mother didn't have sex. And he said, I'm not going to tell you now, but you'll find out. And sometime later, he came into the master's bedroom without knocking. And the mother and Ramakrishna were in Padmasana. They were levitated off the floor about 3-4 feet apart from each other, just locked in a tantric circuit. Ramakrishna says, you think I'd give up this for mere copulation? So there are realms of enjoyment available to the yogi, but they do not add to their knowledge of the self. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Nanatvam ubhutvam anutvadirghatvam ahatva manatvameyatva samatvavarjitam tamishamatmanamupaiti shashvatam. He attains to the supreme eternal self, who is devoid of manifoldness, oneness, many and oneness, and otherness, who is devoid of minuteness, length, largeness, and nothingness, who is devoid of knowledge, knowableness, and sameness.
So the point here is the person of steady wisdom lets the equipment be as it is, fulfilling its allotted role in the Lord's divine plan. Don't fuss with it, but have no relationship. Get out. Swamiji used to say. Next verse.
Susamyamiva yadivana samyami susangrahiva yadivana sangrahi nishkarmakova yadiva sakarmakaha tamishamatmanamupayati shashvatam. He attains the supreme eternal self, whether he has perfect self-control or not, whether he has withdrawn his sense as well or not, whether he has gone beyond activity or is active.
So, the scriptures talk about first class, middling, and lowest order of jnanis. The lowest order of jnanis have intermittent remembrance of their self-nature. They are technically jnanis. They know who they are, but because of the force of their prarabdha, the mind gets covered again, they get re-identified. At that time, they suffer like anybody else. But then the memory of who they are returns. Oh God, it's like waking from a dream. They let go of all that identification. The middling order of jnanis are those who have had a lot of desire and therefore have done a lot of tapas. And they have wiped away so much of the mind that there's not much mind left anymore. These are the ones that are seen to be very fond of samadhi. They're hardly here at all. And then the highest order of jnanis, whose minds are most subtle, realize the self without the need to destroy the mind, the tapas. They are seen to act in the world, doing all sorts of stuff. And if we're not subtle, we may confuse them with ordinary people. Classic example of this highest order is King Janaka. Swamiji was a jnani in this order. He wrote books, he worked 365 days a year, he also opened hospitals, schools, ashrams, tirelessly working. But if you were around him, just tuned up to him, so empty. So the spiritual life is not so much about being a goody-goody. My suggestion, follow clearly the sequence of practice. Don't skip steps because you think you're smart. Yes, you should give up your attachment to samadhi. Get established in samadhi first, then give it up. Yes, you should give up any concern about attachment, of what you let go of, what you attain. Yeah, but don't rationalize your bad habits. The mark of the man or woman of steady wisdom is they're at peace. Mind's not at peace. We probably have more tapas to do. And it's not necessarily efficacious just to say, oh, my suffering isn't real. That's not the kind of detachment we're talking about. Giving up. Again, back to what I said earlier this evening, where most of us get into trouble is not on the suffering side. Most of us are more than willing to give up our suffering. Oh God, if I could only let go of it. But don't touch my pleasure. Don't touch my ego feeding. Don't touch my cash and prizes. Don't touch my boys and toys. We want to have that samadrishna. Come to that first. Attain to Avadhuta. Then give this up. Let your equipment be blown like a dry leaf in the wind. Any thoughts on this? It's funny, a young man was here a couple weeks ago, and he had been listening to some YouTube video of someone who says that in order to attain self-realization, you have to be a celibate. He says, is that true, Jim? And I said, well, actually, no. All of the rishis, the authors of the Vedas, were householders. But you will probably have to go through a period where you don't have sex until you reach an internal point where you're willing to do without it for the rest of eternity. Then whether you are in a relationship or not, it's not a big deal. You don't have to be a celibate, but you do have to give up attachment to everything. And it's not just sex. Fear of financial insecurity, status, attention from others. Whatever it is, whatever is your God. Next verse.
Mano na buddhir na shariram indriyam tanmatra bhutani na bhuta panchakam aham kritischapi viyat swarupakam tamishamatmanamupaiti shashvatam. He attains the supreme eternal self, who is not mind, intelligence, body, senses, or egoism, who is neither the subtle elements nor the five gross elements nor of the nature of space.
So all of these are things that we see in the Prakarana works, you know, the Panchakosha, the five koshas, the Panchakaranam, the five subtle elements, their division and subsequent recombination, etc. All those various lists of things of the not self. Why do we have them in the scriptures? You really go through the analysis of that. It's to see what we are not. Gross, subtle, causal body. There are all sorts of these maps. What the verse is saying is, if you can be aware of it, it is phantom, mithya, illusion, vayatya, false, pratibinda, like a reflection in a mirror. Pretty to look at. Get involved. Next verse.
Vidhau nirodhe paramatmatam gate na yoginashchetasi bhedavarjite shaucham nava shaucham alinga bhavana sarvam vidheyam yadiva nishidhyate. When an injunction ceases and the yogi attains to the Supreme Self, his mind being void of differentiations, he has neither purity nor impurity. His contemplation is without distinguishing attributes, and even what is usually prohibited is permissible to him.
Yes. So, for the person of steady wisdom, they have no idea what they're going to do from moment to moment. And we have all these do's and don'ts in our moral precepts. The yamas and niyamas, things you should do to be a good yogi, purity, etc. But for the person of steady wisdom who's rooted in this knowledge of the self, who's to say how they're going to show up in the world? Again, don't use a verse like this to rationalize bad behavior because you are still at the effect of the indulgent tendency of mind. Master that first, then do as you will. Any thoughts on this? The other point here is Swamiji used to say, if you cannot see who I am, then just see me as a mouthpiece of the scriptures. Do not get involved with my personality. People who fixate on the behavior of the teacher are going to see, in many ways, the reflection of their own judgments. I remember this one woman who says, oh, Swamiji, Satan, I saw his face change. He's Satan. The Satan she saw is within her. But there's no benefit running around superimposing our judgments on other gurus. No value. The way to get the best is you go there for business. I'm here for the knowledge. If you just do business, then you'll be safe. Then the personality of the teacher will not get in the way. Now, if the teacher, as Shankara says, who's as calm as a fire that has burned up its fuel, meaning all those roaring desires and bad habits are like banked coals, then probably their personality will not get as much in the way of the transmission. But for you and I as shishas, as disciples, be there for one purpose. I'm there to do business. I'm there to get the knowledge. Use the guru, tune up to him. Bang the guru with your questions. Don't get involved with trying to have a good friend. It's probably not efficacious. All right. How many more in this section, Ganesh?
One more.
All right.
Mano vacho yatra na shakti miritum nunam katham tatra guru padeshata imam kathamuktavato gurostava yuktasya tattvam hi samam prakashate. Where mind and speech can utter nothing, how can there be instruction by a teacher? To the teacher ever united with Brahman, who has said these words, the homogeneous truth shines out.
Yes. So the teacher will be teaching on many levels. So for Swamiji, watching his behavior was one way in which he would teach. Of course, when he was breaking open scripture, that was another way he would teach. But frankly, after a couple of years, I found that his teaching was incredibly repetitive. It got to the point where I knew what he was going to say before he said it. But at the deepest level, he always invited us. Come meet me there. That's where, in many ways, the real teaching took place. Okay, we'll end a little early tonight. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha Hari Om. Thank you all.